Have you ever felt like you're one person at work, another with friends, and someone else entirely when you're alone? We all carry different sides of ourselves, and sometimes it's hard to know which one is the real me. As a human race, we've drawn maps of every continent, charted the oceans, even mapped the stars. But when it comes to the inner world, we wander without direction. So how do you navigate something as vast and confusing as the human soul? That's where a map helps. And the one we'll explore today is Carl Jung's Map of the Soul. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be going on a tour, and I am going to be your tour guide. We are going to be taking a look at the deep inner world, the inner landscape of ourselves. How well do you think you know yourself? I think human nature is very complex. We are given labels from birth, and underneath all of those labels, there is deep complexity of emotions and territory to explore, and it can be hard to uncover on your own. This video is going to be loosely based on Jungian concepts. I have right here Jung's Map of the Soul, and I just thought it was a brilliant analogy, a map that we can use to guide ourselves into the unknown layers of our identities. What I've done is I've taken each of Jung's major concepts and I've translated them into a very illustrative format, a landscape, a territory to get to know. And inside of each territory is going to be a character who also embodies this part of the psyche. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to read for a little bit, and we're going to start at the front of the psyche where the mask is, and then move into the deeper depths. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. I'm very excited about all of the illustrations I have, so let's go ahead and jump right in. This is Jung's Map of the Soul. The first stop on the map of the psyche is the persona, also known as the mask. It is the face you show to the world. Think of it as the front gate of your city, where visitors get their first impression. At the center is a grand theater. The main archetype here is like a director, a fashionista of identity.
Follow me.
You are the main actor, and the world is your stage. She chooses your costume, cues your emotions, and picks what lines to say. She decides which version of yourself appears at work, with friends, or at home. Her role keeps you socially functional. But many people get lost here, mistaking the costume for the actor. They can't see deeper than what's on the surface. We have to remember this front gate is only a small part of a much bigger landscape. So let's talk about the persona for a little bit, because she is one of my favorite archetypes to get to know. How many masks and costumes do you feel like you have at any one time of your life? I feel like most people have between 3 and 20. There are just so many times that we have to put on a different role and play a different part in the play of life. And I think what I like most about the persona is that she is someone who can shape you to however you want to be as well. The fashionista of identity can give you a new costume if you don't like the one you're currently wearing. There's all kinds of things that you can do to alter your appearance and the way that you come across. And it's something that you can continually work on throughout life. So I think it's also just important to realize every time you're interacting with someone, you're just interacting with their mask. And that is true for virtually every person that you will come across. So I don't know about you guys, but I've always been annoyed when someone gives me a label based on some faulty perception of me. Of course, I am playing a role and changing from person to person so that I can meet whatever social needs. Especially for certain types of people, sometimes you might put on a more reserved mask if they're unsafe or gossip a lot, or you can't trust them with your most deepest inner world. I really like the persona because she helps you understand that it's okay to be playing a role at certain times of your life. Definitely don't get lost in it, but it's something that can help us just become more of who we aspire to be as well. I think this is a good one to get to know. And do you like all of your costumes and masks? And maybe take an inventory at some point. So let's go ahead and move on to the next territory. Who is your sense of I underneath the mask? The next stop on the map is the ego. This is the capital city of the psyche, the anchor of identity. The main archetype here is like a ruler. This is someone who governs with awareness and draws the line. This is me and this is not me. Wherever the ruler places his focus, that part of the city will light up, and the rest will fade into shadow. Every time you say, "That's not who I am," or "I don't like that," it is the ego defining its borders. The ruler here keeps life ordered, and the most important thing he does is provide stability. A healthy ego is able to adapt to change while maintaining sturdy walls. An unhealthy ego can inflate. This is the king who thinks he owns the whole world. Or it can do the opposite. It loses its sovereignty and lets its walls collapse. The ego is vital, but it rules only what we are aware of. What about everything we've forgotten? All right, so the ego. The ego is a very important territory to get to know. In Jungian concepts, it's mostly seen as just a landscape, your center of consciousness. There's no actual archetype here, per se. It is just the parts of yourself that you're aware of, your thoughts, your feelings, general perceptions. I think it's really important to understand that it has limitations. So your general sense of I am might be very incomplete. And that's why it's important to go on tours like these. I think the most important thing that I wanted to emphasize with the ego is just the importance of having boundaries, sturdy walls that can adapt, but also you need to have them. Walking through this world in a way where you're just kind of weak and don't really know who you are, that will generate all kinds of problems for you. It's important to have a very organized, structured understanding of yourself. I'm not going to get into every nook and cranny of what can go wrong here because there is quite a bit. I'm also not going to get into like the complexities of ego transcendence or anything like that. But I think it's just important to understand that your ego is important. You've got to have one in order to have some sense of differentiation from the people around you. So with that said, I want to dive into the next territory because I think it closely goes with the ego and they have kind of a dance between the two. So let's dive right into the next territory, which is the personal unconscious. Beneath the ego lies a network of caverns. These are storehouses of memory, emotion, and the roots of your heritage. The main archetype here is like an archivist. She keeps record of everything you've lived and manages the emotional currents that run beneath the city. The real power here lies in the complexes. These are bundles of memory and feeling tied to themes like love, family, or power. They are almost like electricity for your being. Most hum quietly in the background, but when triggered, they can flare into the present, like a small comment that strikes an old wound. The archivist oversees it all, but she is like a foreigner in her own land. She speaks in symbols, not plain words. Dreams, gut feelings, sudden insights. Whether you take the time to interpret her or not, her terrain is always shaping your life. So far, we've reached into the caverns of the psyche, and we can officially call ourselves deep. But deeper still lies what's been exiled, the parts of us cast out of the light. To truly know yourself, you must go there. Into the shadow. All right, before we dive into the shadow, I want to spend some time with the personal subconscious because this is definitely one of my favorite territories to get to know. I think if you're someone who is more introverted, sentimental, or creative, this is probably a territory that you have pretty well mapped out. Things like memory and maybe just the reservoir of emotions that drive you. A lot of people can spend time here and gather wisdom and understanding, and you need to in order to walk through this world in a way that has some depth to it. I feel like a lot of the world tends to repress their underworld. They don't really have an understanding of how deep or far these caverns can go. And I think at a bare minimum, you need to understand some of the things that drive you. That is where all of this lives. So in Jungian psychology, the personal subconscious is more of a territory that you can go to from time to time. It doesn't actually have like a archetype that really corresponds with it, but I wanted to put a character here because I think it just helps you understand the territory a little better. Same with the ego. It's actually more of like a territory than a character. But I wanted to draw them as characters because I think it's nice to have an understanding of their dynamic as well. Like I think both the ego and the personal subconscious have to have some kind of relationship. And the ego especially needs to occasionally listen to what the personal subconscious is saying. It's almost like a bad comedy when the ego is not listening. And a lot can go wrong if you're not taking the time to glean insight from your memories and all of the things that have happened to you. So that is the space. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the last part of the psyche for the day, and that is the shadow. Beyond the caverns of memory lie the shadowlands, the dark corner of the psyche. It is so vast, no one knows how far it goes. Why enter if it's so frightening? Because sooner or later, you must. Without the shadow, you can never be whole. Here lives the exile, the archetype of this land. She is wild, but not to be feared. She guards what you've banished: shame, grief, fear, and the child still carrying old wounds. But she is more than a keeper of pain. The exile is a teacher. She shows you how to face shame and transform wounds into strength. Because the shadow carries a secret. Hidden here is the golden shadow, your greatest unrealized potential. This is the paradox of the shadow. The very place you least want to go is where your brightest light is waiting. All right, so the shadow. This is one of the most important archetypes to get to know within yourself. And in Jungian psychology, it is very complex. I could probably spend 20 videos on the shadow alone. It is just such a dense and dark territory to explore, but it is one of the most important ones if you want to become whole in your life. I think the main thing that I want to talk about for this one is just the character, the exile that I designed. I spent a lot of time for each of these trying to think of how they would be best embodied, and the exile was one of my favorites to draft. I wanted her to have a mask because I think this is also the place that is in most contrast with the persona. They have kind of a yin and yang kind of balance to them. What you present to the world is often casts a large shadow behind you if you're not very fully conscious and aware of the parts of yourself that you don't want to see or have other people see, especially for people who get lost in the persona of the mask. So I designed those two to have kind of a yin and yang kind of look to them. I wanted the persona to have like a white coloring because white is just full of potential and you can become whatever costume you want. And then I wanted the shadow to have that kind of dark contrast to her. I drew her as having a mask with blush marks because if you want to get to know the shadow territory, those blush marks are a symbol for shame. And a lot of what you will uncover in this territory is things that you were shamed about throughout your life. Let's see, I also designed her as having antlers because she's supposed to be like your repressed wild instincts as well. And that's a territory that I just feel like we aren't in touch with a lot of the times, especially like the deeper we are in our roles, we tend to forget sometimes our animalistic nature. And that's something that you have to understand if you want to see the wholeness of who you are. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time for each of these characters and I liked that black and white contrast. The other one that I liked was kind of that blue and orange balance of the ego and the subconscious. And I tried to be very deliberate with my symbolism. For anybody that wants to explore Jungian territory, one of the things you should look into is symbolism as well, because there's a lot of insight that you can get from symbols. And there's so much complexity there that I'm like losing my train of thought as I'm thinking about it. So, but that's something to explore on your own at some point. It's just the relationship that you have with certain symbols. So, all right, so I am going to end on that note. And my main question for you guys is, which areas of the map do you feel like you have fully explored and which ones do you feel like you need more of an understanding of? I think different times of our lives call for different things. You might spend a lot of time with the persona, the fashionista of identity, during times when you have to do some kind of identity switch. Maybe you need help being more of a chameleon or less of one. Maybe you need to look at your personal unconscious and start to glean wisdom and insight from your memories or the shadow. Maybe you need help with those areas of shame in your life and trying to unlock those parts of yourself that are just so repressed you can't even get to them. Let me know, and I plan to do more illustrative work. I've been doing that on the side and just trying to amp up my skill there. So I think it's really powerful when you can have images and things embodied through characters. It just sticks in the mind a little better. I think especially for the very abstract world of psychology, it can just help make the invisible visible and give us some tangibility to these concepts. So anyway, drop in the comments your guys' thoughts, and I will definitely read them for ideas and inspiration for future videos. So yeah, I am going to leave it at that. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.